Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the broadcast. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. It is Saturday, July 20th, 2019. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me here. This is a special Saturday edition of the broadcast and a special edition of the show for the anniversary of the 50th. I should have said that first. The 50th anniversary of the, let's just say, the alleged Apollo moon landings. And also the 20th anniversary of the release of Stanley Kubrick's final film, Eyes Wide Shut. Because, of course, as you know, he had that in his contract, that film would be released, had to be released on July 20th. Which at that time was the 30th anniversary of the Apollo moon landings. And, of course, as you know, all the stuff with The Shining and all that. So this is a good time to go back and watch my Secret Messages film series. If you haven't seen part 1 and part 2 of that, go get yourself a download of that in the download shop in HD and watch that tonight. That's a good one. That's a good one to put on your list of ones to watch in honor of this anniversary. Another great one, after you watch that, then go download, you can get it on iTunes and shit. If not, you can find it on BitTorrent or something, but Capricorn 1. If you haven't seen Capricorn 1, you should watch Capricorn 1 this weekend. You should do that. You should watch that movie, man. And that's one of the shit. That's an old movie, man. I think it's the most interesting thing that I've seen this week. It's again, I always wondered that. That's when you know you got them on something. I got to tell you, man. That's the stuff that I've had the most. It's not like I've done a ton of stuff, but I've posted some videos and stuff before. The ones that the subjects people seem to be the most touchy about, those are the ones that make you go, there must be something to that. But it's just comical that this week, leading up to the 20th, leading up to today, the 20th and the 50th anniversary of the alleged moon landings, I've seen more stories this week in the news bringing up the whole fake moon landing thing than it just shows you how hypocritical. It's okay for these news outlets to bring up the fake moon landing and talk about it and run articles about it incessantly, but it's not okay to talk about it being faked, period. It just makes no fucking sense. This doublethink Orwell shit has got to go. If everybody that doesn't believe in the whole hoax is so out of it and so crazy and so wrong and so off the mark, then why do you keep giving them attention? Why are you worried about it? Why are they a threat? If they're wrong, they're no threat to anybody. Right? If you're, that right there alone shows you. It should tell you everything you need to know. If you need any more convincing, that should do it. That's the thing. They're really worried because this is just one of those issues and one of those topics where if enough people begin to, and I think a lot of people have, all the figures and stuff I've seen, what is it? 1 in 6, something like that. I think one poll I saw said it was 1 in 10 in 1999. That's 20 years ago. I think the newest numbers I saw said it was like 1 in 6 Americans believe the moon landings were fake. And Yeah, again, I've seen more stories this week talking about the fake moon landings and basically, doing everything they can to keep their official narrative in place. And look, once I started learning about photography and film and stuff, that's when that whole thing became, it's crazy. It's just like the veil. You can see the same picture a million times. And from one perspective, it looks one way, it looks real to you. And then once the veil is lifted and once I learned photography methods, that's when I started looking at the pictures going, there's just no way this is real. You could argue up and down all day long about how it happened and everything else, just like the Kennedy assassination, or how they did it. But at the end of the day, you have to be a moron to look at those pictures and think those pictures are real. I mean, the lighting is what's always gotten me. The fucking perfect studio lighting and the positioning. And that goddamn lander that's made out of fucking aluminum foil and PVC pipe. And there's actually, if you go look at pictures of it, there's actually one part of it supposed to be like a radar dish, I suppose, or like a transmission thing. It's literally one of those orange construction, or whatever you call them, those cones, orange cones, warning cones. It's an orange cone with PVC pipe sticking out with electrical tape wrapped around it. I'm not making that up or trying to be funny at all. I'm being 100% serious. Go look. There's pictures of the lander where you can see it. That's what's so ridiculous about it. Among many other things. But what I think is interesting is how the sort of the UFO community, the people that are obsessed with UFOs and all that, and a lot of those people in that community not only believed a lot of disinfo, they put out a lot of disinfo. I mean, listen, I'm into all that stuff. I'm into everything, but all those, I don't know. I guess it's the same thing with any subject. You get every subject, no matter what it is, if it's 9/11 or if it's the moon landings or if it's UFOs or Kennedy assassination, you always have a set of gatekeepers that they put up as, the official figureheads of that particular topic. And then if anybody comes in with any other information, well, then they discount them, because then they say, well, if that was true, Mr. Whoever, the big nuts of this fucking group would have already fucking come up with that. So obviously that's not true. That's another thing they gatekeep with. The biggest thing I see within like the people who believe in UFOs is a double think and double speak where, well, people are just shit scared. They're piss scared anymore to actually say what they really believe in. Like a lot of people will especially the UFO types, the thing that's really started to gain traction a lot over the last 10, 15 years has been the idea that, well, a lot of these UFO people now, they believe, yes, we went to the moon. It's like a half and half theory. It's like they believe we went to the moon, but they believe they faked what they showed everybody, and that we actually went to the moon in secret technology. But yet they never offer up what type of secret technology. Well, give us a theory, give us an idea. What type of secret? Oh, I don't know. And I kind of leaned that way a while for myself. But again, it's the stuff I talked about previously. I've talked about a bunch of times. The things for me is we've never seen any evidence or any proof that even with protective shields and suits and everything, that man can go through the Van Allen radiation belts and come back through alive. And you're certainly not going to take movie film back and forth through the Van Allen radiation belts without it being exposed and ruined. Those are the two biggest things for me. On top of that, all the other anomalies and the way, just the way the footage is, people, the way they're jumping up and down, the way they're moving and all that. And people said, oh, well, that's just because that's the cameras they use. Now, wait a minute. Film doesn't shoot like that. 16 millimeter film doesn't. It's not jerky like that. Otherwise, I mean, maybe people, that's the reason they've got that lie across to people, is because in the old days, you see very old film footage, it kind of, from like the 1920s or something, it kind of moves like that. But by 1969, we had moving picture tech. I mean, look at the movies, movement was not jerky like that naturally on 16 millimeter film in 1969. It wasn't. It just flat wasn't. And the idea that they beamed back images and all this using non-existent technology. I mean, it's the whole thing was, concocted and ridiculous. It's just interesting how much they pointed this week. I have a picture somewhere in my archives that shows from some family, and they were at NASA right before the mission, and you can see the flag in the shot, and it's before they went to the moon. It's got the rod in it to make it stand up. And where was the wind coming from? Where's that oxygen from an atmosphere coming from that was blowing the flag around that you see in the footage? Give me a break. Here's one example of one of the articles I saw this week. Why do people believe the moon landings were faked, and how do we know they weren't? Millions of people firmly believe that the moon landings were faked, with a 1999 Gallup poll suggesting that 6% of Americans believe Apollo 11 was a hoax. A further 5% were undecided. YouTube recently cracked down on conspiracy theory content, but there are still dozens of deadly serious videos arguing that the moon landings never happened. On the 50th anniversary, TV stations and newspapers are filled with video and imagery of the landing, so how can conspiracy theorists argue it's all faked? Conspiracy fans claim that the landing simply wouldn't have been possible with 60s technology, or that details in the images prove the landings didn't happen. There is also a bizarrely specific rumor that Stanley Kubrick directed the whole thing. So why do so many people believe the landings were faked, and how do we know they're wrong? A self-published book in 1976 by rocket expert Bill Casing, who never went to the moon, America's $30 billion swindle, lit the match under the moon hoax conspiracy. Many of the supposed giveaways still touted by moon truthers today, that's hilarious, come from Casing's book. Casing, a former U.S. naval officer, had worked as a technical writer for Rocketdyne until 1963. Casing claimed with little evidence that NASA had only had a 0.0017% chance of completing the mission for real, and thus resolved to fake it. That's the whole, that's what, you got to watch Capricorn 1, man. If you've never seen Capricorn 1, you got to watch that movie. It's I guess it was made in the 70s. And that's what the whole thing's about. It's about them, I think they're going to Mars, maybe, in this and not the moon. But they knew they had, a very little chance of survival. So they lead the astronauts right up to the moment they're about to leave. They launch the rocket without, and they bring the astronauts in, and they tell them, and O.J. Simpson's in it. O.J. Simpson is one of the is one of the astronauts. You got to see this movie. You've never seen it, dude. It lays out really exactly how they faked the moon landings in this Hollywood movie from the 70s. Capricorn 1. Got to see it. And so then they make the sort of the astronauts a secrecy and all this stuff, and then I think fucking Bill isn't Gutenberg in that from Police Academy. I can't remember. There's a bunch of people. I think Hal Holbrook's in it. There's a bunch of people you'll know in it. But yeah, they start bumping people off to cover it up, to keep it a secret. Arthur C. Stewart Hardwick has debunked moon hoaxes repeatedly on Quora, saying the first person to give real voice to moon hoax conspira nonsense was Bill Casing, a technical writer who had worked for Rocketdyne until 1963. Why? It's unclear. He was not obviously insane, but he was obviously unqualified to express the opinions he was expressing. I love that. Unqualified to express the opinions he was. This is the same thing that YouTube, this is the same terminology YouTube uses. Since when do you have to be qualified to give an opinion on something? Opinion is not considered 100% fact all the time. Opinions can be fact. Yes, that's true. But if someone expressing an opinion about something, how can you regulate that? Yeah, well, the answer is the only way you can do it is by totalitarian bullshit like they're doing now. It's the only way you can do it. That's the real issue with any of this stuff, isn't it? People talk about, free speech and free speech that. And no, man, this is beyond free speech. This is trying to regulate and put an end to anyone expressing an opinion about something. You know, it's just like doing these racists and stuff. Hey, man, if one person has the opinion that they don't like another race or another color, whatever, for whatever reason, that's their opinion. That's not a fact. It may be a fact to that person based on their belief system, but it's not a fact. It's an opinion. And you have the right to say, well, that person's a fucking goddamn, that opinion's retarded. Fuck that guy, fuck that opinion. But to make a statement that someone is who are you to judge that someone is unqualified to express an opinion about anything? So you can't express an opinion about the moon landings because you didn't work for Rocketdyne, you didn't work for a goddamn military industrial complex company, so therefore you have no right to give an opinion about something. Again, this is the problem with all this stuff. That's the problem with what YouTube is doing. It's one thing to not want stuff on your platform that expresses hate speech and violence and explicit material towards minors. You know, all that stuff is common sense stuff. That's stuff that everybody can agree on. But when you start going after people because you don't like the fact that they express an opinion that the earth is flat, or they express the opinion that the moon landings were faked, or that aerosol chemtrail spraying is going on, and you start going after those people and creating these algorithms to keep people suppressed, you're not going to do anything but embolden people even more. That's all you're doing. That's all these people are going to do. They're not going to stop me. I've been around. I was doing this, and I was doing around long before I ever started uploading shit to YouTube. By the way, Podbean, who are members archives are through, Podbean just sent me a notification saying, I don't know how much more you're going to have to pay per month for this. I'll find out, but I got signed up for the trials of it or whatever, but Podbean is about to start doing, having a live broadcast option, which is all the more reason for you to get a subscription to our members archives, because if you get a membership, that will be included with that. So that means that I'll be able to start doing some live shows where, where I basically no holds barred and play music like I used to, all that stuff, and don't have to worry about any kind of YouTube. So if I can just broadcast them live to Podbean, you can listen through the app and whatnot. Now, I won't be doing all my shows live. I did that for so many years and years and years. I did it live, and I did it at a certain time. And that whole thing of doing a show at a certain time of day, every day, for me, it just doesn't work for me anymore. My schedule just is not, I can't do it like that. Because then you have to adjust every day around that time of day. And I just can't do that. Because sometimes I don't sleep. Sometimes I work all through the day and night working on these films and don't working on this stuff. And tying myself down to a regular schedule, I just can't do that anymore. But the ability to be able to do some live shows and to do them anytime I want, that's going to be awesome. So another reason to get yourself I'm just glad we're going to have something where I can do that, doesn't automatically have to go to YouTube or whatever. Casing misused his expertise as a technical writer to create the impression the missions were faked, Hardwick says, ignoring any facts that got in the way. In a newspaper interview in 1977, Casey said there are no stars in any of these pictures. If they were taken on the moon, there would have been some stars in evidence. Obsessing over the images taken on the moon has become a favorite pastime of moon truthers in years since, and people still raise the no stars argument. Well, that's not the convenient. Where is the light coming from? The light source can only come from one place. And that's not natural sunlight. Those pictures, and any picture you look at from them, those are not. Look, that's a 2.5 mile replica of the Sea of Tranquility. They got the motherfucker stored out in a. I was going to go try to find it. I found out where it was at. Didn't have time to go there. It's out near Flagstaff in Arizona. It's in a fucking hangar. It's a 2.5 mile. It's no bullshit. It's a 2.5 mile replica of the Sea of Tranquility on the moon that they created, that they used to do this. And it still exists to this day, and it's not a hoax, and it's not a fake thing. It's a real thing. Why on earth would anyone else build a 2.5 mile replica of the Sea of Tranquility unless they were going to do what they did with it, which was this? The way the light, if you look in the picture, like the picture I'm looking at now, is I guess a picture of Neil Armstrong, and he's standing there near, you can see one of the legs of the lander or whatever. You see the footprints around him. And the light is perfectly on the spot where he's standing. Like a spotlight. It's a spot. It's a studio spot. And then when you look behind him, it's as if there's one beam of sunlight, as if the sun is only beaming down on the spot where he's standing because it's darkness in the periphery behind him and around him. That's studio lighting, ladies and gentlemen. That's not natural lighting. I don't think. I think that most of the majority of pictures, especially then, with the type of cameras they would have had then, you could probably get better results now. But I still think even if you went to the moon with an iPhone, you're going to have to use a flash. I think you're only going to get grainy, dark photos on the moon. There's just no way you're going to get these perfectly crystal images that are perfectly lit exactly right for a camera to be able to pick up and apply to the film. It says that still photography from the Apollo 11 moonwalk was captured on camera, specially built by the Swiss company Hasselblad to mount on an astronaut's chest. The cameras used by the NASA astronauts were built to capture images on the lunar surface, so the aperture was adjusted for the blazing sunlight of the moon. The blazing sunlight of the moon. If there was the blazing sunlight on the moon, there would not be darkness behind where the astronauts are. Because if you look in any of the pictures, it's only brightly lit in the very spot wherever somebody's standing at. Because it's a studio spot coming down on that location. All the other, this is exactly how you would light something in a film or a movie situation. This is exactly how you would do it. It's perfectly. And then, of course, once people found out about the Kubrick thing and started looking at that and noticing how, go and watch, if you know stuff about film and how to make films, go watch the Kubrick films, man. And go look at how he lit stuff. What was the next film that he did after 2001: A Space Odyssey? after the moon landing stuff. It was, that one with Ryan O'Neal, Barry Lyndon. That was a period piece, right? And so during the time in which that film took place, there wasn't electricity yet. Everything was lit by candlelight. Well, how are you going to be able to shoot on? You can't light film with candlelight. It's not sufficient. So what did Kubrick do? Well, he called in a favor over to the boys at NASA. Do you think that filmmakers every day just get? I mean, well, probably a lot more now since you've got script approval and all that. But back then, in the early 1970s, you think that NASA just up and gave Hollywood movie directors whatever they wanted for the movies? Hell no. But again, for his film, the next film after 2001: A Space Odyssey, Barry Lyndon, he somehow had magical knowledge of these specially designed Zeiss lenses that they made for NASA that were built for, I guess, satellites and other things, or to look into space, where they could get high resolution images in almost complete and total darkness with very little light. And that's what he used. That's what Kubrick used to film Barry Lyndon. And that's why it's an incredible movie. If you don't know that and you watch that movie, it won't mean anything to you. But that he figured out, I mean, that was just where he was at. No other filmmaker would have been able to do that. That's why that film Barry Lyndon is such... I like it. I think it's a great movie. It's very long. But the scenes where they're indoors, I don't think anything else has ever captured what it truly would have been like to live in those days, in the pre-electricity days, and what life was like, and to actually see it, with period costumes and period sets and everything lit by candle. And that was something that, again, that was one of those things. And when you go back and you watch the way Kubrick would light stuff, especially in the, there's lots of scenes in 2001: Space Odyssey. They're, where the lighting is just. But he had that in all the films, where just Eyes Wide Shut. There's a lot of that too. Kubrick would light his shots in a particular way that's very different than just what, like, a standard, somebody working on a standard crew of a film would do, because all that stuff's going to be very by the book. And The Shining, I mean, goddamn, all of his movies. So it wasn't until after I had studied all of his works and became totally obsessed with all of his films and all of his work and everything, and got into studying filmmaking myself and studying all the different elements of it. That's what inspired me to want to do that's why I do everything on my films. That was, it wasn't really, I didn't set out to do it that way. But I had learned that, because that's how Kubrick could do you could put him in any position on a film set, and he could do any one of the jobs proficiently, as good as anybody. You could you could just have him be a lighting guy, and he could just be a lighting guy. You could have him doing sound design and nothing else, and he could just do sound. If you just wanted him to do that, any particular one thing, whereas the way it's done in the industry, you have one expert or multiple experts nowadays all working in that particular area. We have one crew of people that works particularly just on lights, just on cinematography, just on editing. And Kubrick was really the first guy, and I don't know if there's been any other since where every element, he could literally do every element from the director to everything and do it as good as any of the professionals. So this is what gave his films that particular look. I mean, it's there. If you really look at it, you can even go back to his earliest stuff and it's there. It's there in Dr. Strangelove, Lolita. It's in, all of his films. That's one thing that all his films have in common is there's a certain, people call it a look, the Kubrick look and all that, but it's more definite than that. It comes from a place of knowing and being a professional at every element of making of the whole process. Not just being, most directors are just, they do their thing where they put their fingers up to see, to make the frame and how they're going to frame the shot up. And, they then try to piece together the scenes to make it look at how they have it in their head and until they get the right take. And then that's pretty much it. Then then you've got teams of other people who do everything else. The editing and the audio and the lighting, everything else. It wasn't that way with Kubrick, which is exactly why he was a perfect person to do that bullshit ass footage. Oh, bullshit. No, I mean, it was good, but it's bullshit ass. I mean, there's so many. But there are a lot, and you can see all this stuff. You can see all the camera track technology that they use, where they created the big models. All that stuff's come out. They've released that under the guise of this is what they did for training exercises. Bullshit. That shit that if you look for the stuff that they put out talking about, this is the stuff they did in preparation for the moon. No, that's the stuff they did for the actual stuff. It's where you put a camera, it's like a train track, you put a camera on the track, then you've got a big, fully studio lit model of the moon, and you pull it back and it makes it look like you're coming into the surface. That was all invented with Kubrick and all that NASA money. And then, 6-7 years later, you've got George Lucas, who only got to do Star Wars because he had been working with, what was the guy? Francis Ford Coppola. He'd been working for a studio production company. He's the one that talked Coppola into doing The Godfather. Coppola didn't want to do The Godfather. That's the come up for George Lucas was not just Star Wars. The come up for him was being there and being the guy to convince Francis Ford Coppola that he should do the Godfather movies, because he was like, basically, you had to tell him, this could save your entire career, your entire operation. And of course it did, but then there you go. You got, and that's the first Star Wars movie. That was the first movie, the first mainstream Hollywood movie that came out after that technology that they invented and had never been used or done before for the fake moon landings. That's the same stuff they employed to show those landing shots, and the shots of them coming down the surface of the moon are the same exact camera track technology they used for the Death Star's trench scenes. The same exact stuff. It's fascinating when you really look at it and you get down to it. And this, of course, I think is why they. I mean, I could go on this all night. I mean, the whole genre of science fiction. If you want to get down to, you go back to the beginning of science fiction. You can go back to the very beginning of it. The science fiction has and always has been a way for them, as I've always said, my coined phrase, they fictionalize the truth, so the truth seems like fiction. That's always been the way they've done it. Science fiction's been there from the very. I think, if my opinion, after researching this stuff, was shocking to me. Go back and research the very early sci-fi guys. Go back in those early pioneers of sci-fi and look into their backgrounds and the rest. Science fiction was created 100% to create disinformation and to fictionalize stuff they didn't want the public to know was real and existed. Just like I was talking about earlier, you got the UFO types. This is the contradictory thing that the UFO types always say that drives me crazy about the moon landing. Well, yeah, we went to the moon, but they faked a bunch of stuff and had Stanley Kubrick do it and showed it to us because they didn't want anybody to see the UFOs there. They were waiting for them. Now, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense at all. Because the story is they went when they got on the moon, they encountered some UFOs there and they were warned never to come back to the moon. Right? But they weren't expecting that to happen when they went. So your whole theory and idea that, yeah, we actually went to the moon, but they faked stuff because they didn't want us to see the UFOs, that doesn't make any sense if they didn't know in advance that there were going to be UFOs there. That's the thing about these guys. They never offer up any, okay, if you think that they actually went to the moon, but they went in top secret technology, then what type of top secret technology are we talking about here? Because it would have to be the kind that number one, more than anything else, could get humans back and forth through to the other side and then back to Earth again through the Van Allen radiation belts. And I've never even seen anybody put any theories, even wild conjecture up about what they just always say, oh, secret technology. Well, what? What type of secret technology? The major thing about the whole, if you really want to know, the whole thing, the whole going to the moon thing anyway, was just bullshit PR for the American public. So they could, because after World War II ended, that was the other thing, and I've got a couple of stories. We'll get into that too. That was the other thing this week, besides just all the stuff of talking about the fake moon landings. Guess what other stories they're running this week out the ass? All of a sudden, everybody's talking about Operation Paperclip and the Paperclip Nazis and NASA. All of a sudden, that's a topic. All of a sudden, all these stories coming out this week on it. But that's, if you want to get down to it, that was the whole thing. The whole bullshit thing. Do you really think that we needed the top German Nazi rocket scientists? Do you really think that the whole reason we brought them here was so they could help us get to the moon? Give me a fucking break. That the whole NASA thing, all that stuff was a public front for the development of military weapons, chiefly at that time, ICBM nuclear weapons. That was the reason why the Paperclip Nazis were brought over here. They had to do something, though. They couldn't just tell the public, look, we brought Nazis over here and we're going to get these Nazis that were developing V-2 rockets that killed, tons of people during World War II. We're going to get them over here to make our nuclear weapons for us. No. The public wasn't going to buy into that. What, we're bringing these people to get, we fought in World War II to defeat the Nazis, and we're going to bring their guys that were making the best weapons over here to make ours? Public wasn't going to get behind that. But then you sell them on this thing that, okay, these guys helped us get to the moon. Then all of a sudden it becomes this joyous, wonderful thing, and nobody's looking at any negative connotations. The only reason they were brought over here was to build weapons. And the whole fucking fake moon landing thing was about giving the Russians the idea that, look, they were just trying to stave off shitty. It was all fake anyway. But it was just another way of saying, look, that's what it was. They were just testing it. That thing went up. That fucking Apollo 11 rocket went up. It went up in the air. They saw they can control the direction, the trajectory of it for a nuclear weapon, and boom, that was it. That's why they were all high-fiving and hugging each other in there. Meanwhile, the fucking astronauts are down on Earth. That thing landed in the fucking ocean or something somewhere. All of that stuff was about creating advanced weapons. And this is exactly why they've recovered extraterrestrial crafts and the rest of that stuff. It's, there's stuff they don't even know that they've recovered. They don't even know what to do with. It's just sitting there, hidden in places that we've never been able to figure out how to use. And the Nazis had found some of that stuff too. They were well ahead of us. They had already been back engineering extraterrestrial technology and had laser beams and photon weapons and all this crazy shit. So that was another one of the usage of the Paperclip Nazis was they had to have something they could sell to the public appearance of why they were here and why we were using them. And then the other was to help develop, all of the big major developments after World War II in weapons and technology and all of that stuff came specifically from these Paperclip Nazis. That was, all of those advances that you saw that we made came from that. Because they already had the jump on, we had recovered some extraterrestrial stuff too, but we didn't know what the hell to do with it. And that was one of the things that, one of the roles they played was helping to develop and use some of this back-engineered technology. But there's been all kinds of these stories coming out this week. The shameful truth. America only put a man on the moon with the help of Nazi monsters. Not that anyone will admit it, amid all the hype about the 50th anniversary. Watching the moon landing 50 years ago from his comfortable Paris home, Yves Bion could barely contain himself with the spectacle unfolding on TV. Dozens of white-shirted scientists and engineers at the Apollo Mission Control Center in Houston, Texas were on their feet, many waving flags, cheering at a triumph that was enhancing American prestige and unleashing an ocean of apple pie patriotism. Yet Bion, a hero of the French resistance, was spitting venom at the screen that night, and had he been alive to see last week's documentaries repeating the footage of Neil Armstrong's giant leap for mankind, his reaction would have been incandescent. Amid the jubilation half a century ago, no one bothered to point out that America's scientists had been given a huge helping hand, or that the moon landing was, in fact, the brainchild of German scientists led by Wernher von Braun, Kurt Jebus, and Arthur Rudolph, or that all three were Nazi war criminals guilty of mass murder. The 1969 footage of the three American scientists embracing each other in the center of the Houston control room never reached the global television audience, and neither was it broadcast amid last week's 50th anniversary celebrations. The fact that more than 130 German scientists were employed on the design and production of the Apollo 11 moon landing was conveniently ignored at the time of the mission, and no wonder. Oh, so that's okay, see? That even goes against what some of these current people, because I've read a lot of people, so-called experts and people who make documentaries and books about this that talk about NASA and say, well, they had to give something. No, they didn't even tell. According to this, now they're saying nobody even knew about that. And I'm pretty sure that's true, but yet, when I went to Alabama, I don't know how new it is, when I went to Alabama back in 2012 to film stuff for Lost Secrets of Ancient America, I was in, I went to Birmingham, but where was I at? Was it in Florence? I can't remember. Might have been around Muscle. Anyway, one of the places there they have Wernher von Braun Drive and stuff up there, and the Wernher von Braun Auditorium. It just blew me away. Because that's where they were all brought up to Alabama. That's where all their work started at when they were brought over to after Paperclip. It just blows me away. I guess they thought, well, a lot of people just figure everybody in Alabama, which they aren't. They probably just, how fucking stereotypes are, but they probably just thought everybody in Alabama was a bunch of racists anyway. Nobody's going to care or notice if we name some auditoriums and some streets after some Nazis. You know, they're not going to care anyway. They'll probably care at least in Alabama. That was probably their argument. These men were veterans of the infamous program to build V-2 rockets, the secret weapons that Hitler believed would obliterate London and save Germany from defeat during the Second World War. Today, the amnesia continues, and it seems willful. Why 50 years on has the BBC refused to re-show the Paperclip conspiracy, a TV documentary produced in 1987, for example. It exposed the shocking crimes committed by von Braun's team and the subsequent conspiracy to conceal the atrocities. Amid the sentimental nostalgia of the past few days, the corporation has ignored a fundamental question: what price conscience and morality for that giant leap for mankind? The world only knows about the true history of the Apollo program because of such people as Bion, one of the few slave laborers to emerge in 1945 from the underground factory where Hitler's engineers built the V-2s. Himmler's SS forced an estimated 60,000 Europeans onto the production line in Nordhausen on the foot of the Harz Mountains in central Germany. Survivors were rare. Bion has particular memories of Arthur Rudolph, the 37-year-old director of production in Nordhausen, who just 17 years later was the director of the Apollo production in America. As Bion recalled, Rudolph's management technique in Nazi Germany was distinctive. If he suspected anyone of not working, he hanged him above the production line and left the body dangling above us for a few days as a warning. Every week, dozens were killed that way. Sometimes an electric crane lifted 12 prisoners at a time, hands behind their backs with a piece of wood in their mouths to prevent them crying out. Every day, over 100 people died from exhaustion, starvation, or disease. Von Braun's team were committed Nazis, including Rudolph, who, when I interviewed him in 1987, told me, Hitler's first 6 years were marvelous. They were the best years in Germany. Everybody was happy. The fact that Bion survived Nordhausen was a miracle. With the Americans approaching, vengeful SS guards went on a murderous rampage against the laborers, but Bion managed to hide. Von Braun and his team, meanwhile, had already left, calculating correctly that they could wait in the Bavarian countryside and offer their expertise to the Americans. We were interested in continuing our work, he said. Yeah, you guys were hiding out, waiting to see if Americans would take in. I don't believe that. Come on. They had those lists. The Americans knew who the top guys were, and they protected them. That's a fact. Anyway, I'm not going to read the rest of this. It goes on way too long for me to read all of it. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is interesting. It says von Braun was described as an ardent Nazi and a potential security threat. Investigators had discovered that in 1931, Rudolph had marched through Berlin in a brown stormtrooper uniform, holding a flaming torch and singing the Nazi anthems of racial hatred. He was classified as 100% Nazi, dangerous type, and recommended for imprisonment. By now, Rudolph and 134 rocket experts were living in New Mexico, and they were determined to keep them there. His next obstacle was Samuel Klaus, an officer in the visa section of the State Department, the equivalent of Britain's Home Office. Klaus, a Jewish lawyer, had toured Europe in 1945 and was appalled by the atrocities. He understood better than most the terrible crimes committed by German scientists. Outraged by the Pentagon's attempt to ignore the truth, Klaus refused to allow von Braun's team to become American citizens. None of them, he said, was so vital that their expertise could not be extracted within 6 months. After that, they must be returned to Germany. In the Pentagon, Rosimus and his superiors fumed. Get that little Jew off the committee, ordered Major Simpson of the Pentagon's intelligence section during conversation in Washington with Klaus's superior. What the Germans did during the war was irrelevant, recalled another Army officer. We had to keep the scientists out of the Russians' hands. There you go. That was the whole reason why they did it. So with the support of senior politicians, Klaus was removed from the visa section. The next step was to sanitize the security records. Paperclips were attached to all the files requiring attention, and American officers in Germany were told to rewrite reports allowing the Pentagon and State Department to form a different interpretation. Yeah, that's where they changed the well-known thing where they changed, where it would say ardent Nazi next to it, and they would write not an ardent Nazi next to it. Overnight, Herbert Axter, von Braun's assistant, was given a clear record. Rudolph was declared to be not an ardent Nazi. Von Braun's revised report said his records had been lost in the Soviet zone of Germany and that no derogatory information was available. The path to permanent residence was now clear for the most important of the Nazi scientists. U.S. citizenship soon followed. Protecting Nazi mass murderers was by now a favored, if secret, policy in Washington. In 1949, the CIA invented the rat line to help their German agents and informants to escape Europe to South America. Among the first to flee was Klaus Barbie, the Gestapo chief known as the Butcher of Lions. Not merely rehabilitated, but thoroughly respected, in September 1962, von Braun met President Kennedy in Huntsville, Alabama. Yeah, that's where I was trying to think of Huntsville. As the chief director of the American Apollo program, von Braun had arranged for Kennedy to witness the test firing of a Saturn rocket, the type that would eventually deliver Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to the surface of the moon. Charismatic and smiling, von Braun greeted the president as if he were a close friend, and together the two men watched as the orange flames spurted out of the base and the rocket launched successfully. Turning to Kennedy, von Braun said, "I will fulfill your promise to put a man on the moon by the end of this decade, and by God, we'll do it." But again, even then, even when Kennedy was in office, the plan for them to create these rockets for ICBMs and nuclear weapons and missiles and stuff, that was still the goal even then. It wasn't like Kennedy was just wanted to go to the moon. But, like I said, all these guys that never give you any alternate examples, the only other thing I can think of, if they actually did go, but they went in secret with secret technology, the only thing I can think of that they could have done that with was some sort of portal or Stargate thing. Because if you're using that, then you don't have to worry about any sort of Van Allen radiation belt problems. And this very could have been why they encountered some creatures or crafts or whatever it was they encountered up there, if you believe that happened. I'm just spitballing here, throwing out theories. I'm not saying I believe that this is what happened. I'm just throwing out theories. Because, I used to be in the camp of that camp. I used to be in that, we went with secret technology. I'm not in that camp anymore. I got more questions about the moon itself. The moon itself is just anomalous. It's anomalous. It's weird. No other moons orbit their planet like our moon does, because it doesn't orbit in a usual orbit. It orbits in a geosynchronous orbit like what a communications or any kind of other satellite would do. There's lots of talk in the ancient Sumerian texts about the Anunnaki having an outpost up there, and that's how they monitored and basically run whatever operations that they're still running on Earth today from. They talk about hiding the battery, the power supply to the bond between heaven and earth, which is some power, the Ark of the Covenant, some power supply for this portal or Stargate machine, hiding it on the moon. We know the Masons are obsessed with the Ark of the Covenant. And then, you can see those pictures. They're in the Grand Lodge. They did. You can see where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin got the fucking Masonic aprons on the outside of their spacesuits. They did them, whether it was fake or whether it was real, the intention was still the same. They did a Masonic ritual during the time when they were whether they were on the real moon or whether there was a fake moon, regardless of that, they took the time to get pictures and do a Masonic ritual to declare the moon the property of World International Freemasonry. That's a fact. And in my opinion, the reason they would do that is because, again, you talked about the Templars. That's what the Templars were looking for. The Masons spawned off of that later. They want that ark. They want the Masons want that ark, the high level. They want that. They want that ark. They want to open up that portal. It very well could have been they opened up the portal, and when they opened up that portal and went to the moon on the, they probably didn't know at first where the portal even went. This would explain how they've left certain artifacts like the mirrors and all that stuff up there. So I believe it's far. You want to get down to it. You want to get down to the nuts and bolts of it for me. I would sooner believe they went to the moon through some sort of ancient Stargate technology that they discovered, some ancient portal technology, and went there and back and got warned not to come back and encounter. I would sooner believe that than you'll ever get me to believe we went there with those spacesuits that the people who made the company that manufactured those spacesuits said they have zero radiation protection in them. They were made with zero radiation protection, ladies and gentlemen. I would sooner believe they went there on the backs of rainbow unicorns than believe we went there in that goddamn PVC pipe, fucking duct tape, road cone, fucking aluminum foil thing they show us that they landed in. Give me a fucking break. I'd sooner believe that they flew there on a fucking X-Wing with Ewoks piloting it than to believe that we went to the moon and back through the Van Allen radiation belts with no protection and with film cameras that didn't get exposed from the radiation. I mean, you know, and what the funny thing about this, most people would say, your average person is going to say, that's crazy. No, you're crazy for believing this official narrative that we went there and back multiple times with no radiation protection and with cameras that had film in them that didn't get exposed by radiation, which would happen to film. And you're crazy to tell me that we couldn't have went back a million more times with current technology. That's bullshit. I'd sooner believe we went there through some Stargate or some portal and you could just walk right through and back. And that the reason we haven't gone back through that portal and gone multiple times and revealed that to the public is because we were issued a stark warning as to what would happen if we did. I think that's more possible. Again, I'm not saying it's 100% what happened, the truth. I'm not telling you 100% that I believe that's exactly what happened. I'm just saying, that's, if you want to theorize, it's as plausible of a theory as we went there in a fucking little tinfoil thing with duct tape around it and aluminum foil. Give me a fucking break. You're an idiot if you believe that. But the good news is that, you know, more people now are seeing it and can see it for what it is than they had in the past. But I just thought it was hilarious. And yeah, they're running all sorts. They're talking about the Kubrick thing too. They're running all sorts of Kubrick stuff, talking about the Kubrick stuff this week as well. I just think it's hilarious that we're not allowed to, people who are, you know, attempting to find the facts on this stuff are not allowed to talk about it. But the mainstream media are allowed to talk about it all they want, so long as they are talking shit about the people who believe in this stuff. Then it's okay to talk about it. That's the kind of fucking double standard horseshit I can't stand for. But like I said, regardless of that, no matter what you believe, as long as you believe something other than, don't just look at these pictures here. It's hilarious. Every time I look at these moon pictures, I just fucking laugh, dude. The shadows of where everything's at, it's just hilarious. It's perfectly well lit. I mean, kudos to Kubrick and his lighting director on the moon landings. I mean, you guys did that shit up right. Fake ass. And every goddamn rock they've ever analyzed that's come back from the moon has all been Earth rocks. That's a coincidence too, huh? Every time they get some from a museum, and anytime anybody finds out somebody has one, like they go and they want to arrest these people, or somebody gets given one as a gift, and then anytime anybody has any moon rocks in their possession, the government does anything to get them back. And every time they're analyzed, 100% of the time, every time they're analyzed, they turn out to be nothing more than regular old plain Jane Earth rocks. Every time. Ones that have been sitting in museums for years, purporting to be rocks from the moon. They test them, Earth rocks, every time. So yeah, man, you should watch Capricorn 1. You should watch my Secret Messages 2-part series with the Bowie stuff and the Von Braun stuff and all that, and the Kubrick stuff in it. You should definitely watch that series. The other thing about Stanley Kubrick, and it's being the 20th anniversary of Eyes Wide Shut, I tell you, I remember going to see that movie 20 years ago tonight. 20 years ago tonight is when I saw it the night it came out. And I'll just never forget the feeling I had when I came out of the theater. I was so, I can't even describe it. I wouldn't necessarily say confused, but there was a bit of, I wasn't confused, that's not the right word, but kind of confused and kind of like, I just immediately felt like there was way more to this than and of course, I was right. But I just remember thinking, okay, first off, it was so short. That was the first thing. I knew immediately. I remember when it was over, I told my friend, it's like, that wasn't the whole movie. And he was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, dude, how long were we in there? How long was that movie? We were like, I don't know, an hour and a half or something. Like, dude, I don't remember how long it was. Since when has Kubrick done a movie that's clocked in under fucking 3 hours? That was my first thing. I was like, that wasn't the whole movie. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm telling you, that wasn't the whole movie. That shit was edited and cut up and chopped up. Why? Why would they do that? Well, of course, I didn't know at that point. I didn't know anything about the moon connection and all that stuff. But I proceeded to go back and see that movie at the theater like 5 more times. But what's fascinating about that coinciding, it's interesting. It's almost as if Kubrick had, because, people have speculated, well, why was he so adamant about Eyes Wide Shut? Why was he so adamant about that movie being released on the anniversary of the moon landings? Well, because he was trying to show you that if you get, as I've talked about, if you get to the bottom of one thing, then you're going to get to the bottom of another thing that you may think is completely separate and not connected. If you get to the bottom of the moon landing thing, then you're going to see who's behind, the same people that behind that are the same people who are doing this stuff in real life, as I tried to show you in Eyes Wide Shut. And what's fascinating is that here we are 20 years to the day after that film came out. And what did we have? I mean, what happened in the past week? We had the R. Kelly thing happen where, federal charges, the Epstein thing blows wide open. with connections to the highest levels. I mean, for that to happen in the same week, within a week of the anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission and the 20th anniversary of, man, it's as crazy and bizarre as it sounds. I think he knew. I think he had maybe another reason why he was killed. I think he had maybe some sort of access to something. I don't know, man. Maybe not, but I've been saying that for a while. Why now? Why is all this? We've known how long? Just like I talked about the other night in the other show when I talked about the Khashoggi stuff. That one woman knew about the connection to Khashoggi and Epstein since 2003. I found out about the connections to him and Jones and all that stuff and the Nexium stuff with the Bronfman Empire 10 years ago. I told you about that. Russ Baker laughed in my face about it. And this stuff's just now coming out now. And it's come out and happened this month in July, very close to the anniversary of the Apollo moon landings and the release of Eyes Wide Shut. And Stanley Kubrick was adamant and had that. And he made them put it in his contract before he made the film that the movie had to be released on July 20th, 1999. And here we are 20 years after it. Because if you really get down to the key elements, you go watch Eyes Wide Shut again. Go watch that again, even if you've seen it a million times. Go watch it again, but in your mind while you're watching it this time, keep the idea of the Lolita Express Epstein stuff in your head, and you will see that film from a totally different perspective. Like the guy at the costume shop, remember? The guy at the costume shop, and he's like selling off his daughter with the Japanese businessman and all that stuff. And the whole thing where at the very end, where they're in the toy store, and they give their daughter away to those two guys at the very end, and they don't even say anything about it. Watch that shit again, man. People have talked a lot about Kubrick, showing satanic stuff and this and that and saying that it's the Illuminati, and those are all assumptions. Kubrick never once said or made anything at all, suggestions at all, that had anything to do with the Illuminati. But what he was trying to show you is that with sex trafficking and the pedophilia stuff, these people that hired me to fake the moon landings, this is one circle. This is one thing. And then Scientology involved in that too, with Scientology brainwashing his own daughter. I mean, go watch the stuff I put in Spellcaster. Spellcaster 1.5. And she just conveniently shows up in Dealey Plaza on the anniversary of the Kennedy assassination doing interviews with Jones, of all the people she could have done interviews with. And not to mention all the stuff I exposed with the real, why there was a whole conspiracy genre built up around the JFK stuff and why it was so related to Scientology, because Scientology had a bigger hand in the death of JFK than probably anybody. Because he shut them down, confiscated their e-meters and everything else. Kennedy had no idea. The whole thing with him, with Scientology being on the CIA payroll and being a creation of MK Ultra, was a pay grade above even what Kennedy knew. Because right back to where we were talking about the moon landing stuff, that was the other thing. It wasn't just the V2 rockets and the rocket technology and creating NASA and the phony space program as a front to develop weapons technology and a way to get them to teach us how to harness the use of this back-engineered extraterrestrial technology, just like I showed you in the Spellcaster. It was also for the stuff that the Nazis were specifically doing with black magic and mind control, and be able to create robotically created super soldiers using black magic and conjuring demons, what the Scientologists call thetans, conjuring those and using those to control robotically controlled assassins and super soldiers. And this is what created the MK Ultra program and then created Scientology on top of it. That's why you got to see Spellcasters 1.5. You got to see my Mystery Hollywood series. You got to see all that shit. Kubrick, it's almost like he knew. I'm just not believing that it's a coincidence that all this shit cracked off and all this shit everybody's known about with Epstein and the whole thing. And, you know, I'm just not believing this has all happened right now, coinciding with this anniversary by accident. It just makes the mystery even greater, doesn't it? How crazy is it that after I talked about, and I had no idea, how crazy is it after I talked about Nardwuar and Bill Cooper in one show separately, the very next day I got an email from a listener in Toronto saying, you don't know if you even knew this when you talked about both those guys in the same show, there's actually an interview where Nardwuar interviews Bill Cooper from 1993. And so thanks to our listener for sending me that, and I uploaded that to our YouTube channel. So if you haven't listened to that, go and listen to it. It's that's very telling. Very telling, both in terms of what I was talking about concerning Nardwuar and both what I was talking about concerning Bill Cooper. Be warned, though, it is a disinfo buffet. All you can eat. All you can eat. Remember that Fat Boy song? I loved that when I was a kid. All you can eat. That like echo, where like when you said eat, it would like echo. All you can eat. They're like at the fucking Sbarro, like tearing it down. The fucking manager was going nuts because it just fucking ate them out. That was from Crush Groove, wasn't it? Hell yeah. That's a classic. I guess that's it. I guess I don't have anything else tonight. This is a special edition. Listen, you know, we have not reached our fundraising goal for the week. We got some in. Thank you to those that did contribute. We were in a situation now where we're going to have $200 by tomorrow. All that's going to take is 2 people contributing $100 each, or 4 people contributing $50. Again, we're keeping the questions running all month long. If you want to ask a question and get a question on the show, contribute $100. You'll get 5 free downloads from the shop and 1 question. And if you contribute $200, you will get the complete download collection box set and a question for the broadcast. $200 tomorrow, Sunday, by the end of the day is what we need. And, you know, like I said before, these goals that we set, these are not suggested goals. This is the amount that we need to keep everything up and running here on a week-by-week basis. And I can't just keep delivering shows and setting goals and we not meet them. So I wasn't even going to do this show tonight, but I wanted to do it for the 50th anniversary. From now on, if we don't reach our fundraising goals that we have set each week, I will not deliver any new shows until we reach that goal. It has to be reciprocated, and I refuse to keep working my ass off for it. And all I'm asking for, I'm not asking you to support me. I'm asking you to support this work and the minimum amounts we need to pay the bills, keep the lights on, keep everything rolling here. That's it. I'm doing my part, but the majority of people out there are not holding up their end of the deal, and that's why all my stuff is about to be going behind paywalls very soon, and I'm going to be giving nothing away free. But anyway, regardless of that, get yourself a membership to the archives. I'm glad they're going to be doing that live thing where I'm going to be able to get on that soon. So now's the time to get yourself a membership. We've still got the lifetime memberships. They're going to be on sale till the end of the month, and then that's it. They're $500 normally. They're on sale right now for $300. Go snag yourself a lifetime archive membership. Get yourself some downloads from the shop. We've got the complete download collection box set of all my work. Regular $175, on sale this week for $150. You know, a couple of people throw in contributions. A couple of people get lifetime memberships, one or two. A couple of people buy the complete download collection. We'll be good. But getting nothing and having, our watching my subscriber rate go up constantly, with so many thousands of new subscribers just this year alone, and yet we're not getting support equal to that. That means that people aren't pulling their weight, and we need more people supporting our work. I don't try to sell you shit. I don't make you sit through commercials, try to sell you worthless products. I refuse to do that. But, this idea that I'm trying to give people free will, I'm trying to give people a choice. But if you give people the choice not to contribute, they're going to choose that 100% of the time. And, I'm going to have to start making changes to where if you want to hear my work and you want to hear what I'm doing, then it's going to require you to support me monetarily in some way, whether that be to buy a subscription or buy the downloads or whatever else. But ass, cash, or grass, baby. Nobody rides for free. All right. I love you guys. We'll see you next time. Take care.